Good morning, everyone. Hello. Hello, hello. How are you? How is your half term going? If you're on half term, I think most of us are on half term, aren't we? If you can see me, do say hello. Hopefully you can. I can see a few people have already started chatting in the comments. Good morning, Emma. Morning, Rachel. Morning, Claire. If you can see me, like I say, do say hello. Let me know as well where you're watching from, because sometimes it highlights some problem areas and you might make friends. It's always quite nice. Morning, Carrie. Morning, Jess, Sunny. Morning, Bella. Bella learned how to say my name yesterday. It made my absolute weekend. So Jess works at Sunshine and Bella is her daughter, and she works incredibly hard, does our Bella, to develop her speech, and she mastered Chrissa yesterday. So Bella, I'm really, really proud of you. I bet you're telling me off because she is the boss of Sunshine. Morning, Jessica Ward. I'm so glad you can see me. Morning, Fiona. Morning, Nicole. Hi, Natalie. Hi, Sarah. Sarah from Thirsk. I've been to Thirsk. Morning, Yvonne. Morning, Graham in Hampshire. I've also been to Hampshire. Oh, and Natalie from Hampshire. Oh, there's a theme. Morning, Rachel. Morning, Ashley. So, if you can see me, say hello. We are going to have an action-packed morning talking about send parenting. Um, Morning, Michelle from Portsmouth. I don't think I've been to Portsmouth. I'm gonna have to go to Portsmouth. What's in Portsmouth? Sell it to me. Come on. Morning, Fiona. Oh, I've already said morning, but you are in Kingston upon Thames. I also haven't been to Kingston upon Thames. Morning Sunshine Support, whoever you are. I didn't just type that to myself, but that's very nice. Um, anyway, good morning. Oh God, everybody's coming in now. I'm loving this. Morning from Kent. We have a lot of clients in Kent. Morning from Bicester. Oh yes, I've been to Bicester. You know what I was doing in Bicester. My favorite place to go shopping. So I better get started. We've got quite a bit to get through. So I'm Chrissa, if you didn't already know. I know there's lots of familiar names on the chat this morning, so you probably know me. I'm the founder of Sunshine Support, and I come on here every other week to have a little chat about something topical. And one of the things that's always topical, of course. Morning, Becky from Burton. I've definitely been there. It's not far from me. One of my colleagues has said, I go to Bicester for shoes. That is exactly what I bought in Bicester, by the way. Oh, Michelle, you're not selling Portsmouth to me. It doesn't have a very friendly council, apparently. Anyway, I'm going to ignore the comments for a second. Hello, Julie from Worksop. I've also been to Worksop. And Chrissy from Utoxeter, been there as well. Oh, I sound so well traveled this morning. Utoxeter, Hampshire, Burton upon Trent. God, I'm global. So this morning we're going to be chatting about send parenting. So you're probably here because you are a send parent, or perhaps you're a teacher and you want to learn more. But if you know anybody else that would quite like this discussion about send parenting, then please do tag them. Because I think that, oh, there's quite a few people coming in from North Wales. My lovely friend Lisa from North Wales. Do you know what? I'm obviously born and bred in South Wales. And morning, Rachel, who's South Wales. Born and bred in South Wales, never been to North Wales. So I need to sort that out because I know, Lisa, you live in the most beautiful, picturesque part. So I must come and visit. Anyway, if you know anyone who wants to learn more about send parenting, who wants to feel seen and validated, this is the one, guys. This is the one. Georgie from Cornwall. Oh, I love Cornwall, Georgie. I just love it. Anyway, I'm going to just switch my phone off at the side. I'm having an ADHD day today. Some days are worse than others. Clearly, today I'm very sidetracked. So I've got my coffee, and today we're going to talk about send parenting. Now, I talk about send parenting every single day. as you can probably imagine. And my colleagues and I talk about very little else, if I'm honest. And I think it becomes, particularly for the spicy ones of us, it becomes quite a special interest, put it that way, a hyperfixation, because we're surrounded by it, we're immersed in it. As you probably know, I feature on a lot of podcasts, on the news. By the way, if you're into podcasts, do check ours out. It's on all the usual. Oh no, it's on Spotify. It's on Spotify. Do check it out. It's a nice little listen. Um, but I've been featured on the news and other people's videos and Facebook lives and Instagram lives talking about send parenting. So as I was planning this morning, I thought, what am I going to say to you today that's different? And I drew a blank because I feel like I cover it. And I thought, what can I share that's meaningful and perhaps that you've not heard before, something that's going to be quite impactful? So it made me think, what do we need as send parents? And what makes us different? Why are we special? Why are send parents different to parents of kids without send? Now, we know as send parents, we need information, a lot of information. We need a lot of well-being support. And we need to be empowered by professionals so that we don't feel gaslit. And I suppose, well, that's why Sunshine exists. That's why I set up Sunshine back in 2017. It seems like such a long time ago, actually, to be all those things. And we are those things. And as many of you know, I'm sure, because I recognize a lot of the names in the comments, you use our services and you make good use of what we've got on offer here. Um, as many of you know, I've got 4 children of my own. I'm quite a seasoned send parent over a couple of decades. Some of my children have send, some don't have send, but all of them are absolutely impacted by send. Now, for those who don't know what send means, I'm shortening it because it's a really long title. It's Special Educational Needs and Disabilities. All my children are impacted by it, whether they've got it or not. Sorry, I've got the lurgy today. And I've just gone to reach for my tissues, and my children have been in here and removed the tissues. So if my children are watching or my husband is watching, if somebody could come and replace the box of tissues, I'll be very grateful because I think I'm going to sneeze. Nobody needs to see that, okay? So nice bit of entertainment on a Tuesday morning. Anyway, so all my kids, whether they've got send or not, are impacted by send. But what are the major differences between my parenting experience of my send children and my parenting experiences of my non-send children? Because actually, I think that's where we're going to make the most impact this morning, is almost comparing the two. Now, I've got to add a disclaimer in here, okay? I never ever think of splitting my children up in categories in terms of whether they have send or not. So I don't sort of, as I'm thinking about my parenting style, I don't think to myself, oh, I'm going to parent this one in this way because they have send. I've no way, I'm never thinking of my children like that. I don't have labels on them or anything when I'm planning my parenting or executing my parenting. Um, and I never think of sort of send versus non-send because my kids are my kids. And I see a lot of myself in them. I see a lot of my their dad in them. And they're all really different. I feel very, very blessed that I've got 4 very, very different children, really, really different. I have a set of twins, and they are the most different. And those who know them know they look nothing alike. People don't even realize they're sisters. Um, and they're really different. And I parent them in different ways because they've got really different approaches to life. One of my twins does have special educational needs. Um, and actually she's absolutely hilarious, but I don't think many people know. Unless they talk to me and I tell them, or she tells them because she likes to sort of advocate for herself. I don't think you could tell. But anyway, they're absolutely all bonkers in their own way. And oh, tissues are here. Yeah. Thank you. Aren't they great? You see, somebody was listening. Right, just in case I sneeze. And they match my dress, which is good, isn't it? You know, they thought this one through. Um, anyway, as I was saying, I think it is really different though, that important, sorry, that I highlight the differences in my parenting experience. Um, so that, you know, it validates fellow send parents. If you're a send parent and you're watching this morning, you know, I want you to feel seen. I want to know that somebody that you know, I want you to know that somebody understands. Um, and also, on a second note, um, I want to make sure that those who have the honor of knowing us or supporting us, like our friends and family and teachers, that they see this video as well. And that sometimes hearing it from a different voice can make a change. You know, we nag, I feel like I nag people to sort of understand our situation. Perhaps don't nag so much anymore. Um, and it can be boring. I can get fed up of it. And I'm sure you feel the same, you know, when you're like, oh, look, it's different for us. It's different for us. So having me say this might help. So by all means, share the video with them as well if you can. So I guess we need to explore the major differences between the experiences, like I said, of my send parenting experience versus my non-send parent experience. And might I say that my send parenting experience is really traumatizing and really difficult. But why? Why is it traumatizing and difficult? Now, I'm going to add another disclaimer in at this point because parenting my children is not traumatizing. Navigating the system that is meant to support my send children is very, very traumatizing. Um, and I think as send parents, we are re-triggered constantly. We talk a lot about trauma here at Sunshine. So if you want any links to amazing webinars, whether they're live or we've got loads recorded, just comment now and one of my colleagues will hook you up with some links. But, you know, trauma impacts us. We don't really understand what it is. We don't understand enough about what causes it, how it presents in us, why we react the way that we do, why we become maybe so rigid or over compliant. Sorry, I've got something in my eye now. And we really don't understand generally how we can recover from trauma. So I'm not going to go into that today, but I wanted to acknowledge it because I think the send parent is very, very traumatizing. Send parenting, sorry, is really traumatizing. So if you want more links on that, you know, like I say, just comment and ask, and we will absolutely hook you up. So I'm going to make a start on some of these big differences in the experiences. So send parenting versus non-send parenting. So number one, I would say is phone calls. I hate phone calls. And some people tend to refuse to make adjustments to that. So I like to have everything in writing for obvious reasons. And I think send parents are something else we acknowledge, that we like to have things in writing. However, I do seem to get what feels like daily phone calls for my send kids. They're never positive phone calls. It's very rare that I get a phone call to say things are going well. Why would I get a phone call for that? They're always triggering, these phone calls, because they're usually quite negative. So when I see that phone ringing, I'm like, oh no, what now? And it's that feeling of doom, that feeling of dread. And I know so many of us can relate to this because I talk to so many send parents. Now, in contrast, and we're going to have a lot of these contrasts today, I don't have calls for my non-send kids. So they might actually do the same thing as my send child. And I'm sorry to talk about them in this way, send versus non-send, but for the purpose of what I'm trying to highlight today, I hope it helps. But if my non-send child was a little bit mouthy and cheeky, I would not get a phone call home. They would just deal with it. If my send child is mouthy and cheeky, then I get threatened with an unlawful exclusion. We're looking at the sort of inequity here, the differences. And I know that so many of you can relate. So that's number one. Number two, EHCPs and IDPs. So EHCPs is the legal document in England. IDP is the legal document in Wales, and we're phasing out the statements in Wales. So these documents, now we talk about them all day long. There's absolute benefit to them, but blooming heck, they don't half cause some stress, don't they? For those who know, we can't trust. At the end of the day, the reason that they exist is because we can't trust anyone to deliver what our children need, and nor can the government. So these are put in place to protect our children. And these legal documents basically outline what our children's needs are and how the local council, local authority, will fund that provision to ensure that their needs are met. Now, when they work, it's gorgeous, it's beautiful. I've seen it in action in one of my own children. Oh, it's beautiful. And it makes a huge impact. But more often than not, in order to get one and to get it where it needs to be and to get it carried out, parents have to face an enormous battle to get that right. And that battle includes phone calls, emails, meetings, meetings about meetings, uncovering lies, requesting data subject access details, unclaimed funding and fighting with that, annual reviews, more meetings, more phone calls, more emails, reliance on people who may care, but actually make you feel like they don't care because they make you feel like you're an inconvenience. Parents have to be a solicitor, an advocate, a therapist, a teacher. They're seldom just mum or dad. And I don't have to do any of this with my non-SEND children. I can just be mum. And that's more than enough. I can just be mum. When they come home, I'm mum. I prepare them for school, they're mum. I supply them with everything they need in life in order to, succeed. I'm just mum. But actually for my SEND kids, I'm not just mum. And in actual fact, all this battle takes me away from being mum. Because actually, when I'm upset from a day of battling, am I at my best when my child comes home from school? Am I performing as the best mum I can be? No, I'm dysregulated. I'm traumatized. I'm upset. And it's heartbreaking that this is happening to so many of us. It shouldn't be like this, by the way. It shouldn't be like this. Anyway, number 3. This leads on because what I've just mentioned is lots of different job roles. And I think as a SEND parent, you need to have a lot of different job roles. So when I became a mum decades ago, God, I sound really old, don't I? What I had in my mind was quite a romantic vision of this beautiful experience of raising a child, and I would be mum. But what unfolded was something very, very different. And it's interesting the difference. Like I say, I'm mum for my non-SEND kids. That's what my job is. But for my kids with SEND, I am everything. And I think, having to learn the law and become a solicitor, having to understand the medical side of things and become a doctor or a nurse, having to do speech and understand speech and language, occupational therapy and sensory processing and emotional regulation. I'm now all of a sudden a therapist. Sitting in school meetings and sitting in local authority meetings, I'm now an advocate. Now, me personally, I've learned so much about my children's presentations, and I would challenge anybody to quiz me on autism, PDA, ADHD, DLD, PTSD, and loads more. My knowledge is really good. Obviously, it's what I do for a living now as well. But I've also had to learn the law, like I just mentioned. I don't have to do any of this for my non-SEND children. I don't need to know the law for them. I just guide them through life as mum. So that's quite poignant, I think. I think that's really important that we understand. And if anybody's watching and you're not a send parent, but you are connected to one in some way, whether that's professionally or personally, please bear that in mind that when they seem tired, it's because of all of this. They don't have a life outside of this. We immerse ourselves in this world of send parenting. And it seems like we're bonkers and it seems like that's all we can talk about. But yeah, it's consuming because they are the most precious things to us, those children. Anyway, number 4, respect. One of my children recently had an accident at school. It was really nasty, really nasty. And she was taken in an ambulance with blue lights flashing from school to hospital. But when I saw that phone call come in from the school, I instantly knew it wasn't going to be contentious. Now, she attends a different school to my other children because of her age, and she doesn't have SEND, okay? And I must say, from the minute that I picked up that phone call, I was treated with the utmost respect. We headed to the school. I was treated with respect. My daughter was treated with so much respect and care. At no point did we feel as a family, whether that was my daughter or us, that we were a problem or an inconvenience, even though it was a total inconvenience because where she'd had the accident, they'd had to close down that part of the school so that no other children would come in and see or disturb what was going on. And then the ambulance had to come in school. So it was a huge inconvenience. We did not feel at any point that we were an inconvenience. The school handled it beautifully. They kept in touch with us for days after because we went into the weekend after this accident, and they then created a fantastic risk assessment for her return to school. She's absolutely okay, by the way. She's absolutely okay. And she's not traumatized by it because, despite it being absolutely awful and very scary, the school afforded her and us the utmost respect. And that goes a long way. They were validating her all along the way. They really understood the emotional impact that this would have, this accident. And they really, really helped her. Now, we know with trauma that the longer it's left untreated or invalidated or basically left to fester, that's when it gets worse. So for her, she got to recover really quickly because people made her feel valid, and they made her feel important and respected. Now, with my SEND children, I feel that that respect is not really afforded at all. It's replaced with the eye roll. You all know the eye roll. You know what I mean. Even if you can't see it, it's there, isn't it? We rock up and it's like, oh, it's her again. You can feel it. You can absolutely feel it. And that leads me on to point number 5, stigma, because we are seen as that parent. I don't want to be that parent. But whilst society is not only ignoring and looking down on my child with SEND, but society is also rejecting them and neglecting them and neglecting their needs, then I will remain that parent because that's my job. I hate it. I hate it when that parent, she, the other one, comes out to play because actually it doesn't feel very nice. That parent comes out when I'm triggered. That parent comes out when I feel like my child is at risk and not being understood. That parent comes out when the EHCP isn't being followed. That parent exhausts me. And she's not liked by anybody. And I'm very respectful. I don't kick off. I'm very respectful. But I hate it when I have to bring her out. It triggers as well all the times before when she's had to come out. And I have to talk about her as separate because it doesn't feel like me. But I know unless I bring that, unless I bring her out, that parent, unless she comes out, then my child is going to be further neglected, rejected, and ignored when actually I fought to have these things put in place. Number 6, emotion. I am afforded emotion as a non-send mum, but the minute I show emotion as a send mum, I'm being unreasonable. I'm being manipulative. I'm being volatile, over emotional, fraught. I'm struggling. I'm none of these things. I am a parent wanting equity for my child. And if I didn't advocate for them, then surely I'd be punished for that as well. So we need to make up our minds and be very careful in the way that we approach this. Number 7, avoidance. Hands up who knows they're being avoided by people. Because I see this so much. Teachers avoid eye contact because they're like, oh God, no, don't make eye contact because she might come over. Oh my God. Or maybe on the school run, someone will make a beeline for me and I'm like, oh, lovely, they're coming to have a chat about their child because they're asking me for advice. They want to pick my brain, and that's okay. But the minute I raise a problem with my child, I get the eye rolls. They don't want to hear about it again. They're bored. They're bored of my stories. But like I mentioned earlier, as a send mum, our world completely revolves around the things that I've talked about already. I don't need to go back over them. There's no real space for anything else. And this is exactly why actually at Sunshine we do social events, because it sort of forces us all to switch off in a place where we're safe, because we don't have to explain our situation to people. We get it, you know. I always say we're all in the same storm and we're all in different boats in the same storm. And we can recognize one another's boats and we go, oh yeah, my boat is a bit like that. Hi. And so that's why we have these social events, because we do some online social events and in-person social events. And for instance, you know, in a couple of weeks, we've got our cocktail and mocktail making night. And I know loads of parents have contacted us about this because they said, can I bring one of my non-send parent friends? And I'm like, absolutely. Come along and switch off. We're not going to be talking about EHCPs. We're going to be having a giggle. So it's those sorts of things that we need to immerse ourselves in to stay well, because otherwise we do just stay in this cycle, don't we? One of our staff members goes to a regular craft club or craft workshop. That is so important because you really are switching off. But absolutely seek out those opportunities to switch off. It's really, really important. Number 8, power. Now, due to having more respect as a non-send parent, I feel very equal. It's very normal to feel equal. It shouldn't be refreshing, you know? So if I go into a parents' evening for one of my children who doesn't have send, I want a more equal playing field with that teacher. But what's sad is that I find that, like I said, refreshing. It shouldn't be refreshing. That should be the norm. But sadly, it is refreshing because as a send parent, professionals don't see me as equal. They see me as less than. Particularly if they catch wind of the fact I've got ADHD. I spoke to a teacher last week, not in a teaching capacity, might I add. It was in a completely different scenario. And this particular person had been told that I've got ADHD, and I felt that they were speaking down at me, down on me. And I was with a colleague and I said, that was odd. And she felt it as well. And she said, no, that was really, I don't even know what that was about. I don't understand why she spoke to you in that way, because I'm less than. ADHD, for instance, is seen as a disorder. I'm not disordered at all. I'm a bit bonkers, but I'm not disordered. But I think that we need to bring an end to that. And I'm going to be doing some work on this, particularly in schools and in businesses, about not seeing disabilities as less than, because they're absolutely not. Environments are disabling. Society is disabling. But if the right things are put in place, there's not many people who genuinely feel disabled. So back to my point of being seen as less than because I have a send child, if I try and exert my power through my own expertise as a send mum, they certainly do remind me who's in charge, who's in control, who has the power. And it's very interesting because I was explaining a recent situation with one of my send kids to a friend. And she replied, and something had happened in school, and it wasn't particularly nice. And she replied, "Oh my God, if they did that to me, I would kick off. They would know about it. I would make myself very known. I'd have their jobs." And I thought that's really interesting. I'm a little bit too long in the tooth now to try this approach. And I'm probably too emotionally regulated because I don't just kick off. That's not my style. But what I found from that statement, which was that, the statement was very well meaning, very, very well meaning, but I found it powerfully offensive. And like I say, it wasn't meant to be that way, but it made me feel that friend who gave me that statement made me feel that I'm not enough as a parent, that I'm not doing enough, that I should be like others and kick off. But as a send parent, I know better. I know better than to kick off or get firm or make them know that I'm there, because what happens? A social services referral, maybe a false accusation or removal of a provision for my child, or perhaps an unlawful exclusion. I know this because I've had all these things happen to me from people who have just liked to remind me that they have the control. I am in the system. I have opted in to have my children educated within the education system. And I've said something that has upset on a personal level a teacher who has reminded me that they are in control by doing these things. Nothing has ever come of these things. It's been an absolute waste of resources. And it's led to complaints and further complaints. All of it incredibly traumatizing to live through. And ultimately, all of it is designed to silence us. And I keep going on about this, about the system that's designed to silence us. I'm actually getting silenced. Look, I lost my voice. Because I think that we're too fearful in these scenarios to advocate it the way that we want to, and our children, and the way that our children need us to. And I don't have any of these fears as a non-send mum. So when you compare it to, going in for parents' evening or having a little chat to my child's form tutor, this particular child doesn't have send. When I'm talking to their teachers, I don't have those fears. I also don't have to bring out that parent. So the conversation's lovely. It can actually be quite full of banter and chatty and normal instead of being clinical. And that's really frustrating. And I think one of the other things as well bolted onto this is if you have two or more children in the same school and you're having this battle with your send child, it certainly sends a ripple through. And then you become that mum for all of your children. So actually, whilst I'm comparing the send experience versus the non-send experience, sometimes one can sort of affect the other. And I'm very aware of that as well. Number 9 on my list is money. Send parenting is expensive. And so many of us give up work due to the failures within the send system. So we have to give up work. And, I've made a list actually of some of the things that send parents have to fork out for that non-send parents probably don't, because these are needs. These are not luxuries. So equipment, plenty of different equipment out there that send parents have to invest in. Special clothing, special food, special hygiene products, therapeutic support, additional tutors, replacements galore. How many iPads have you had to replace because they've been smashed? But replacements of stuff, special technology, additional heating and electricity, because of course a lot of our children with physical disabilities need this. And then of course there's the private reports and assessments, the advocates, the solicitors. I don't have to do any of this for my non-send children. If I buy them something, it's probably because it's a luxury, not because they desperately need it. So there is a lot of additional cost. Now, we at Sunshine have a lot of free things that you can come to and gain access to, because we know that this costs a lot of money. And so if you want any help, like we do free phone calls, for instance, by all means, comment in the chat and we can send you a link to book that. But our social events, I need to keep coming back to our lovely social events, because we've got cuppa and chat every other week, online and in person. And one week it'll be online, the following week it'll be in person. And you can come to either or both. and they're free to come to. And if you come to the one in person, all of the coffees and everything are free. So it's like going for a coffee with friends in a cafe, but you don't have to pay a penny. And we like bringing people in. We like welcoming you in. So if you want links to that, because I think that, what I'm explaining today, all of our team here already know. None of this is news to us. This is what we live and breathe. So we're ready to sort of welcome you in with open arms. And you can even have a hug if you want to. But somebody spoke to me recently, coming back to the money thing. Somebody spoke to me recently and said that their child needed an OT assessment because school had recommended it. And so I directed them to a fantastic OT who, for this sort of assessment, would have charged about £500–600, which is a bargain in my eyes because I know how good this OT is. The parent had not yet transitioned to full send parent. They were at the beginning of their journey. And when I say full send parent, it's the mindset. Okay, I know that they have a child with additional needs. It's more the mindset that we all end up sort of jaded with, I guess. And so they said, "Oh, I can't afford that. I can't afford that. I shouldn't have to pay that. And I can't afford £500 or £600. Not if I'm going to take all my family on holiday this year." And so that brings me on to number 10, sacrifices. Now, the system makes you give up so much. I've covered quite a bit of that already. But I know as a family, we went without holidays for about 6 or 7 years in order to be able to afford the expert witnesses that my child needed for their tribunal, the assessments, the solicitors. And that's quite heartbreaking as all of my children suffered because of the failures within the system that was designed to support their sibling. And I don't sacrifice things for my children. I'm very bold about this, by the way. I don't like the term "I've given up everything for my children" or "I've sacrificed things for my children," because actually that places quite a lot of guilt on the child. I like to think that my children are on a journey with me and we're all sort of having fun together. And it sounds a bit naff and a bit sort of optimistic and a bit, Disney-like, but that is the truth. However, the send system has made me sacrifice things, not my children, the system. And that's not something that I would be aware of if I didn't have send children, because I wouldn't have to make those sacrifices. So the holidays, sitting and looking on Facebook, looking at everybody's lovely holidays and cruises, or just, going to the local beach, we could afford absolutely none of that. Our car was falling apart. We had to decide how we were going to eat at one point because we had zero cash available. Everything was going on our case, our legal case. And it took us years to recover. We wouldn't have to have done that if our child didn't have additional needs. Number 11, we're nearly there. Bear with me. Restrictions. There are huge restrictions on what we can do as a family and where we can go due to the lack of support available and also the lack of education. And I never feel like this with my non-send children, of course. So, I was talking to a colleague who said that she has to plan everything around her send daughter, which she doesn't begrudge at all, neither do her other children. However, it absolutely impacts every decision. They can't just go to Alton Towers. They can't just go on a little trip to the beach for the day. They can't just do something impromptu. And everything has to be really, really planned, and they need additional family members to be able to help them. It's not straightforward, and it feels very, very restricting. Number 12, and this is a really tricky one, okay, because we've had somebody come in this morning saying that they believe we're using the wrong terminology for this, but I think that it is, it's a preference, and that is dealing with a very dysregulated child. I'm going to cover all the different types of terminology here so as not to try and offend anyone, okay? The child, if they are incredibly dysregulated, may be aggressive and violent in the family home. Some call this abuse because actually it's a person-on-person attack. And so technically it is abuse. But when it's coming from your child who is struggling, some people don't like that word abuse. So hopefully I've covered, you understand where I'm coming from here. This is a very, very dysregulated child who is struggling enormously. Now, they could be verbal or non-verbal. They could be able to explain what's going on or not able to explain what's going on. There are a variety of reasons behind why a child ends up hurting their parent or hurting a sibling. And this really does happen at the hands of our system, because it's the lack of education, lack of support, lack of understanding for these sorts of scenarios. And there's no support. And our children really suffer, whether that's the child who is struggling or their siblings, who can often be victims, because let's call it for what it is here. If anybody else did that to your child, whether it was another child or whether it was an adult, your child would be a survivor of an attack, whether you want to call them a victim, but they've experienced something very, very traumatizing. And it's really hard as a parent to live with a child that's so dysregulated, so incredibly dysregulated, that they physically hurt us or hurt our children. And it's an enormous problem that nobody really understands. And it often results in families being torn apart, because the only way that you're directed is towards the criminal justice system. And I know I've put a reel out there recently on this topic. It's a really sensitive topic. It's one that I don't really like to talk about because I have a personal experience and it ruined my family. So we have a webinar coming up on this. It will be recorded for ticket holders, but it won't be on our academy because it's far too sensitive a topic, and it's something that needs to be sort of quite immediate in terms of how we interact with it. If any of what I've just said, I'm not going to bang on about this too long. If any of what I just said about the sort of hugely dysregulated child that impacts the family in a physical or aggressive way, if this resonates with you, I really urge you to watch that webinar. Like I said, I'm not going to go into any more details because it's very triggering, very traumatizing, but message us if you need help with this, okay? I don't expect you to sort of out your family on a public forum. Just ping us a message. But I mean, I raised 11 points there. I think it was 11. Was it 11? 11-ish. And I could go on and on and on. It's all what I call send parent tax. It amounts to enormous injustice, huge inequity, massive disrespect. And it shows a gaping big hole in understanding and empathy, which is something we should all be affording one another. As send parents, we really feel quite gaslit. We are misunderstood. But there has been something majorly brilliant to have come out of my experience, I know, and that is sunshine support. And I'm not blowing my own trumpet here, but I was determined when I went through it, and I felt so alone. And me and my husband felt like we're the only people in the world to be experiencing this, because there was no support. There was no local parent care forum at the time. There was nothing, absolutely nothing. I felt so alone. And whenever I'd explain my situation to people, people were like, that's a bit weird. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? I don't really know much about that, but have you tried? And there was lots of unsolicited advice. So I was determined when I got through the other side of our court case, because we ended up going to the High Court, that I wanted to make sure that send families are seen, heard, supported. So make sure you lean on us. Just ping us a message. That's what we're here for. Don't ever suffer in silence. I say it every time I'm on here. If you are a teacher, or perhaps a professional, and you're wanting to learn more about this, and I've talked about all the problems this morning and the differences and the stark differences. But if you are a teacher or a professional and you want to learn more about how to better support send parents, I've got a lovely course, a lovely webinar on our Sunshine Academy that I highly recommend. So please do give that a watch. If you want the link, just comment and ask for the link. Be specific when you're asking for links, by the way, because otherwise we won't know which ones you're after. But we also deliver that training in schools, and the schools that have taken that on board, oh my God, it's revolutionized the relationships between the parents and the school, which guess what that does? It impacts the child in a really positive way. So when we have that lovely relationship between home and school, the child really benefits. But when that breaks down, the child really is impacted by it. So it's really important that we both, both sides come together. And it's so hard because when you listen to what I've just said, you can see how hard it is. But I think it's really important that we're not silenced, that we don't shy away from what our kids need from us, what they need us to do. Don't let the system silence you. Don't let it beat you. You just need to be smart. And I think one of the big things for me is that we can't stop learning. We must not stop learning. Information is power. We hear that all the time. And it's true. Never, ever, ever stop learning. If your child has PDA, or maybe they're struggling to attend school, or they're hurting their sibling, or they maybe have a tick that you're confused by and you don't quite understand, or maybe you're starting to realize they need a different kind of education to what, is traditional in terms of schooling. Immerse yourself in learning more about that. Um, like I said, we've got tons of workshops, we've got recorded stuff, and we've also got live stuff coming up, both in person and online. Immerse yourself, get involved. You've got this, you can absolutely do it. We're here giving you that empowerment, that motivation, that inspiration to be able to keep going all the time. So I'm going to come to your comments now. Let's have a little look. Let me see if I can renew the comments. Hang on a second. Oh God, yeah, there's loads. Okay, bear with me. Bear with me. Okay. Okay, so I know lots of you are asking for comment or links, which is great, and one of my colleagues is going to be with you. Um, I'm so glad. Oh, Sarah says she feels seen and validated. Good. I'm with you. We've got this. We've got this. Um, I would like the link for teachers on how to support SEN parents. This is amazing. There's so many of you asking for this link. The thing is, it shouldn't be one versus the other, should it? We just want to work together. Honestly, it's so magical. Let me tell you a quick story before I come to the comments. Uh, one of my children went to a very specialist school and she'd been completely traumatized through the SEND system. And this specialist school was, I've talked about it before, was a very, very specialist, very ambitious school for autistic children, and it was residential. And the head teacher not only revolutionized the way that my child received her education, but they changed my view on education. And my wall started to come down. I didn't feel as at risk with those professionals. And it really opened my eyes, and really sort of reaffirmed my faith in teachers and the school system. Um, and I'm really grateful now because that head teacher is actually our Kelly Jarvis, who heads up our advocacy and consultancy division, which is absolutely amazing. She's been with us for donkey's years. But it can happen, is what I'm saying. You can recover from these really emotional and triggering situations and experiences. And there are some amazing teachers out there and amazing schools. And we don't always get it right, but I think seeing so many people wanting to learn more is just an absolute delight. Sharon says schools need to rethink their understanding of truancy. Truancy is intentional, a panic attack, and ASD burnout is unintentional and based on need. I actually disagree. It's not very often I disagree. I don't think that truancy is what we think it is. If a child is not attending school for whatever reason, there is a reason. So if you have, back in the day, you'd say, oh, yeah, they're bunking off. They're bunking off for a reason. They're avoiding a topic, a lesson for a reason. And I think we need to get rid of send child versus naughty child. Just, oh no, he's just an absolute nutcase, that one. He's just a nutter. He doesn't want to go to school. There's a reason for it. I'm not very comfortable with the whole my child should be let off because they've got autistic and your child shouldn't because they're not. I just think that there's always a reason. So it doesn't matter about their diagnosis. We need to look at the reason. Like everybody knows me as being this school avoidance uh sort of guru, I guess. Not quite a guru, but I absolutely love studying school avoidance. I did it as part of my dissertation for my master's. I love understanding why children can't go to school. I need to understand it to be able to help everybody. And I don't think it's a send versus non-send matter. I think that if a child is not attending school, like I say, there is a reason. It could be a physical reason. It's not always EBSA. It's one of my pet hates. Everybody calls it emotionally based school avoidance. It's not always emotional. It can be physical. It can be something completely different. It could be something at home, but it could be something at school. It's more likely to be school because that's what the research is telling us. But there's always a reason. And just recently, a school that I know really, really well came out of special measures. They have this amazing new head teacher, and he's brought them out of special measures, and they're now good. And the community is now connecting. As a result of the community connecting, attendance has improved. Now, one of the parents recently said to me, oh, the reason that the school is doing so well is that they got rid of all the naughty kids. They haven't got rid of any children. What they've done is they've changed the culture of the school. So they focused on SEND. They focused on non-curriculum teaching. One of the teachers there I was talking to, and I was really excited to listen to, because she said, what I specialize in is drugs, sex, and rock and roll, because I talk about the stuff with the kids that matters. And then they're ready to learn, because actually we're talking about the stuff that's impacting them in society. So it could be to do with sex, drugs, or rock and roll. This is a senior school. Um, and they're talking about the topics to keep them safe, the things that make them vulnerable. But these kids now are like, yeah, miss gets it. Yeah, sir gets it. They're all connecting as a community. Community is huge. If a community is worth being a part of, if a child really wants to be a part of a community and they feel connected, they'll attend school quite often. But a lot of that connection has to come from representation. So they have to feel like they're amongst people like them. I could go on and on and on. I've actually got a webinar coming up on school avoidance for anybody who wants to have a look, because it's a fascinating topic. Um, but I really detest the word truant because we think of the 1980s version of truancy, which is the naughty kids smoking behind the school. You know, they've gone down to the local shop or whatever. By the way, they weren't naughty. They were probably undiagnosed and missed and misunderstood. And it's the same now. So I want us to try and sort of rethink that, but it's completely up to you. I'm not here to control anyone. Becky says, everything you've talked about has happened to us. Thank you so much for talking about it. Look forward to accessing Sunshine support. Yeah, come join us. We're a lovely bunch. Freya, hi Freya. Um, Freya says, hugs to all the parents listening. Thank you so much for being there. Debbie says, yes, I feel like nobody can be living what I am. It's such a lonely journey, isn't it? And I think even now I can find myself going quite into myself when I'm struggling with something that's happening with my children. And I'm surrounded by people who understand. I'm incredibly blessed. We were giggling this week because we feel like we're very much in a bubble. It's like our sunshine bubble where we all get it. And then we come out of it and we realize what the real world is. And we're like, oh, I don't like that. Let's go back into the bubble where people understand me. Debbie says, I'm in an exclusion situation now. Get in touch with us. We've actually got a brilliant webinar you can watch today. It's available on our Sunshine Academy on exclusions, because there are a lot of the Equality Act really protects our children. So if they have SEND and they're excluded, I'm not saying that all children with SEND can't be excluded, but if the reason that they're excluded is linked to their disability or additional need, then there's a chance that they could be protected by the Equality Act. So give that webinar a watch, because it's really, really important that we know this stuff. Again, SEND parenting tax. I'm really sorry, guys. We need to learn this stuff. Lucy says, it's been so validating to hear this. I'm so glad. That's what I was aiming for, Lucy, this morning. Amy says, my son is going through autism diagnosis. He's nursery age. already experiencing many of these things, lots of blame on parenting with little reflection on their behavior management style. I'm a teacher myself, and it's upsetting to see how some feel in relation to the eye roll. I've sat in tears for most of your video. Oh God. As it's validated so many of my current feelings, the guilt, the burnout. How do I access the webinars? Oh, right. Okay. We will send you the links, but just to sort of explain, I guess, how our webinars work, we have at least one webinar a week that's live. So we've got one tonight on autism and regulation, emotional regulation. Jodie Clark, who you might know as Jodie Smitten, she's an incredible academic, but also she has tons of lived experience and she consults into schools and with families. She's a great advocate. She's going to be doing the training tonight on emotional regulation in autism. That is quite typical of the kind of webinars that we do. We've got loads lined up. We have, like I said, at least one a week. But then the majority of them, not all of them, but the majority of them are then recorded and put onto our Sunshine Academy, where there is other content as well. So we have a team that produces content exclusively for the Academy. So there's stuff on there that hasn't been seen anywhere else. And so the Academy is like a membership. It's like a Netflix. You pay every month, $10.99. And after the first month, if you decide to cancel, you can just go onto your account and click cancel. There is no minimum, other than that first month. So you can cancel at any time. But there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things on there to watch, whether they're webinars, short courses, module courses. There's some home ed content on there. There's all sorts of stuff, quizzes to test your knowledge, blogs, audio blogs. Yeah, audio blogs, that's what I meant to say. And our full podcasts as well, because part of our podcast is available on Spotify and YouTube, but the full podcast is available on the Academy. So you can access any of these things. But what we'll do is one of my colleagues will reply to you. They probably have already, just to let you know what the links are. Sharon says, yes, it feels like the education welfare officers only see truancy and not EBSA. They don't see any kind of other reason. And we're trying to get in with more of these education welfare officers and also the school attendance officers at the actual school. Because I was talking to one recently and they had the most beautiful intentions. Honestly, the intentions were so pure. But when I said, how do you encourage the children to come into school? What I was hoping to hear was, well, it depends on why they're avoiding school. But actually, it was, I stand on the gate and say, quick, quick, otherwise you'll get a late mark. And I was like, what? But what if they're not even at the gate? There were so many questions to be asked, but there was so little knowledge. And it makes me really sad. So we need to be doing more about that. Greg says, my daughter's school reacted slowly or not at all to our suggestions and cries for help until my daughter tried to take her life. Oh, my daughter is now getting help. This is quite triggering for so many of us. It happened to me as well. My child, and I completely agree with you. And that's just winded me a little bit. I wasn't expecting that as I started to read the comment. You're absolutely right. And I'm not sure even the drastic situations like that make you feel heard. It's so hard. I might just start crying. Send us a message. Let's have a chat. I'd really love you to send us a message. We can help you by guiding you in the right direction, but probably not going to be able to be done via a Facebook Live, but ping us a message so that we can have a chat. Abir says non-curriculum teaching. So I was just going back to what I was just saying about the non-curriculum teaching. And Abir says, sadly, there's less of that in schools. And you're absolutely right. That's the fun stuff. That's what makes kids want to go. They want to learn. Like in our local school, they were talking last week about sextortion and they were educating the children on this. And my 12-year-old came home and was like, Mum, did you know? And her mind was blown. And what really made my day actually was that she said to me, what makes me sad is that so many people get dragged into these situations, where sending nudes or whatever online, and they don't feel they can tell their mum. I would just come straight to you, and I'm like, whoa, I've just made it as a parent. But yeah, that kind of stuff. it doesn't matter whether your child's got SEND or not. This is vital learning for the world that we're in now. We need to understand. My daughter also said, so absolute kudos to her school. She came home and said, I'm going to stop asking for social media apps. I'm like, yes. She said, I understand now why you won't give them to me. So I felt like it was a major parenting win. Um, Sharon says, but what about a mainstream that doesn't want to get, what is it about mainstream that they don't want to get it? They're sabotaging support and stopping parents from applying for EHCPs. I think a lot of them think that it's going to be very expensive and difficult to manage, but they're not actually managing anyway. So I think a lot of EHCPs are written so badly that schools end up funding them all. Um, and it's one of the things that we consult on with schools. So when we're working with a family, what we tend to do is we work on the case, but we also consult in with the school and help them with the funding element so that they don't feel that they're getting caught short. But I think so many schools find it a drag. That said, there are some amazing schools out there that that absolutely bang those applications out for EHCPs, and they know what they're looking for, and they've got great Senkos who really understand the plans, really understand what wording needs to be in them in order to bring that funding with them. But they're a pain in the bum. I think that's why. As much as, I mean, I'm sat here going, oh, I have to go to all these meetings for EHCPs. That's one child. That Senko has to go to meetings galore. So their job is predominantly meetings and discussions about provision and EHCPs. And I think that must get quite draining. So whatever they can do to avoid that, I'm trying to sort of normalize this a little bit. I'm not saying that it's right. I'm just trying to get into their heads and understand it a little bit more. Clarabelle says, I wish my child could make some relationships, or rather staff make an effort to make a relationship with my situationally mute child. I get a sense he's so lonely. This breaks my heart because I think situational mutism, the clinical term for which, of course, is selective mutism, but it's not a term that many of us like. I've actually got it as well. And it makes things really tricky because they just don't know how to handle the child. They're like, can they hear me? Can they understand me? They're not saying anything. That child now doesn't speak. I was speaking to another friend recently who said that her child has actually been now, she's almost like the in-class caregiver to a situationally mute child. And he'll only talk to her, which is absolutely lovely. But there's an awful lot of reliance then on that child to be that child's spokesperson. So we need to be doing more because there's loads of help out there for situational mutism, selective mutism. We've got so many webinars for teachers to access on our Sunshine Academy that talks a lot about situational mutism and how we can use different approaches to get brilliant results and help that child. But you're absolutely right. And it's heartbreaking, I think, knowing that you're sending your child in somewhere where they're so lonely. They don't want to be lonely. Some children, by the way, they're forced to socialize when they don't want to socialize. That breaks me. Let's teach this child social skills. Maybe they don't want to. That's okay. Some of us are sociable, some of us aren't. But then it breaks my heart equally when you've got a child who wants to socialize but is really struggling for whatever reason. Yes, and Clarabelle's also said about EHCPs, you can apply yourself. You can. That's what we do all day long here at Sunshine. We apply for EHCPs. Stacey says, we've just started our home education journey with my younger son due to a lack of support in EHCP, or the EHCP has been knocked back too many times. Finally got it last week, but unfortunately too late. His attendance is super low due to school avoidance. I feel so let down by the system. But there are options, Stacey. I promise you. Do look into if you've got the EHCP, it would be worthwhile trying to get the EOTAS package instead of home ed, because with home ed, you have to fund it yourself. With education other than at school, that package is designed around the child, and it can look a little bit like home ed in the fact that they're not going into the school building, but it's all funded. So we've got a webinar. This is great, by the way. I've got all the help for you today. We've got a webinar coming up. I'm trying to remember what date it is. Bear with me and I will find out because I'm sure it's in the next couple of weeks. We've got a webinar on EOTA, so education other than at school. Yeah, it's on the 20th of June, so only a couple of weeks away. I would highly recommend anybody who is struggling to get their child an education within the school system to definitely consider this, because it's there for children who can't attend. So if your child has got this school avoidance, for whatever reason, they need help recovering from that. And an EOTAS package can be very therapeutic. We've had all sorts of therapies put into EOTAS packages. There's been the obvious sort of therapies like speech and language, occupational therapy, emotional sort of based therapies. But then you can also have any kind of arts therapy, drama therapy, equine therapy, water therapy, all sorts of therapies. You can have their swimming lessons, everything put into this plan, and it's completely bespoke around the child. But it can all be funded through an EHCP. So what I would say is, if you can come along to that, that's on the 20th of June. I think you'd find that really, really useful. It's online, so it's accessible wherever you are. Julia says, oh, hang on, it's just moved. In our area, you now can't do an ADHD or autism referral without an ed psych report. But schools are only allowed an allocated number of ed psych visits. My son is diagnosed ADHD, and my daughter, who presents differently, is probably ADHD too, but doesn't cause any problems at school. So we're stuck. I would go to the GP and I would access your right to the right to choose scheme. Give it a Google. Google NHS right to choose. And it's where you can request a private assessment for your child through the NHS. Give it a Google. I won't talk about it for much longer, but that's the way that you bypass that silly system. Because I am a girl with ADHD. All right, a woman. Okay, all right. In my 40s. I was diagnosed in my 40s. I was an absolutely beautiful student. I attended every lesson until I became unwell with my Crohn's and couldn't. But I attended every lesson. I was a high achiever. I had fantastic grades. Teachers liked me. I was a teacher's pet. I did very well at sports. I was head girl of the school. I was completely missed. And that's okay, because I was meeting my own needs by doing sports and singing, as I've gone on to say. If you watch some of my old Facebook Lives, I've done one on ADHD. However, you know, there are so many girls out there just like me, but they are now, and we have science now to help us to access those assessments. So do Google the NHS Right to Choose scheme. Somebody I know that recently I advised to go down that route has a child who is 12-ish. And from the first appointment with a GP to receiving the report that diagnosed her with ADHD was 4 months. I'm not saying it's like that in every area, but I'm just saying make sure that you're looking at all the different options when you're trying to get these assessments. Rachel says, if I subscribe to the Academy, do we get a discount on the webinar tonight? Yes, because that one is not going on to the Academy. And the discounts are all in the community area. So on our Sunshine Academy, we've got our learning area and then our community area where you can all have a chat. And it's on there. So just have a little look. Val says, I thought I had found my daughter the school, vocalized working together, but although professionals had reported and there was support and the professional provision, blah, 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 the LA wouldn't deliver the provision. Always got a senior management feel that they are delivering her needs adequately. Had this for 16 months. I initiated a tribunal. School are now on board and saying that they totally agree that the child needs specialist provision. And they always have that opinion. School was supposedly supporting school relationships, but come to the crunch, they always back down to cover themselves. I will never trust a school or local authority again. And this is the problem, isn't it? It's so tricky, because how do we go back on that? Let me see if there's anything else. Princess says, how to appear assertive with schools without looking difficult. so that they listen. We've got a webinar on that. We've got several different types of approaches on this. They're on our Sunshine Academy. Sorry to keep saying this, but you're going to get a better answer from that webinar than you are from me, because they're really detailed. Bridge the Gap, do a beautiful one about bridging the gap between home and school. And we've got that on our academy, so do have a look. Let me see what the time is. Oh my goodness, I've run over. So there's loads and loads and loads more comments, and I wish I could come to them all. However, I am 10 minutes over. So I hope you found that really helpful this morning. If you need us, get in touch. If you can't find the links that, maybe you're looking for in the comments, just send us a message and we can send you a link. Don't suffer in silence. We're here. We see you. But also, if you're a teacher and you're desperately wanting to improve your practice and offer more in terms of support and inclusivity to parents, to not make them feel the way that I've just described, then, oh my goodness, you are so welcome here. And just let us know if we can help you at all. Like I say, we've got a number of amazing webinars coming up. We've got a PDA in-person workshop. I don't know if there's any tickets left for that. Actually, they're going like hotcakes. But the PDA in-person workshop, pathological demand avoidance, that is going to be a very interesting workshop indeed, because we've got 4 different speakers, and they're going to be talking about a variety of different things, including the PDA Society. They're going to be there as well. And we've got some amazing webinars on Tourette's, on child to parent abuse. We've also got school avoidance, EOTAS, you name it, we've got it at the moment. This month is action packed. So make good use of us whilst it's raining. It's not meant to be raining, is it? But make good use of us. And if we can help, just get in touch. Never, ever, ever suffer in silence. We're here. That's what we're here for. But have a lovely day. Enjoy your half term, and I'm sure you'll see me again soon. Bye.